Singing is ubiquitous across all cultures. Everybody sings.
To wander free, oh.
Or at least tries to. However, the vocal folds in our larynx did not evolve so that we could sing, or even talk. In fact, their primary purpose has nothing to do with vocalization. The vocal folds consist of two muscular flaps which form a valve that modulates the intake and outtake of air from our lungs. They also create a barrier that allows us to eat and drink without choking to death. But we are mostly familiar with the role that the vocal folds play in vocalization. When we make a noise with our voice, the vocal folds are engaged, meaning the muscles are tensed. When this happens, the aperture closes and the passage of air is sealed off. As we exhale, pressure created from the contraction of our lungs forces the vocal folds apart and allows air to pass through. The muscular tension causes the vocal folds to come back together again, which closes off the aperture. This process repeats and a pressure wave is generated. When air passes through the vocal folds unobstructed, the pressure is high. When air passage is restricted, the air pressure is low. This alternating pattern of high and low pressure is what produces sound. Increasing the tension in our vocal folds will cause them to return to a closed state at a faster rate, much like how a stretched rubber band will vibrate faster than a looser band when plucked. But the sounds that exit our mouths are very different from the raw frequencies generated from our vibrating vocal folds. That's because creating pressure waves is only half the battle. The sound of our voice has been modified by our vocal tract, our nasal cavity, throat, and mouth. They all collectively act as filters which dampen out certain frequencies while augmenting others. If we could isolate the raw noise from our vocal folds, it would probably sound something like this. Very buzzy and not refined at all. It's just raw noise. But take that same bundle of frequencies and pass them through a 3D printed model of a human vocal tract, and you get a familiar sound. The frequency of our vocal folds stays the same, but when we change the shape of our mouth, we are changing the geometry of the acoustic filter of our vocal tract. The sound of the human voice is comprised of two fundamental parts: the sound generated by our vocal folds and the sound that gets modified by our vocal tracts. Professional singers, especially those trained in opera, spend years learning how to control and shape their vocal tracts in very specific ways in order to produce rich musical tones. They not only learn how to properly control their breathing, but also how to relax their muscles and even alter the shape of their throat by controlling the height of their larynx. Even the slightest amount of tension in the wrong place can profoundly affect the quality of sound that an opera singer produces. One of the hallmarks of professional opera singers is the ability to be heard over all the instruments in an orchestra. They're able to do this by achieving something called the singer's formant. It's a frequency envelope between 2500 and 3500 Hz. This range is especially sensitive to human ears. String and wood instruments have a lower intensity in that frequency range, so if a singer can increase the intensity of her voice by shaping her vocal tract in just the right way in order to stress that frequency band, she can be heard over all of the instruments that comprise a full symphony orchestra. And to see a professional singer's frequency bands in action, professional soprano Raynell Krauss was kind enough to volunteer her voice for the sake of science. Take it away, Raynell, Queen of the Night from the Magic Flute. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something interesting. If you want to learn more about what it takes to become a professional opera singer, check out my conversation with Raynell at the Tree of Knowledge podcast link down below. And again, thanks for watching and stay curious.